So, Jen Cordoso, thank you, is a trauma-informed movement practitioner, educator, and somatic resilience coach with a curiosity for human nature. What began as a personal journey to understand how to manage her own anxiety, body image issues, and chronic pain turned into a deep passion of empowering others to do the same. Through yoga, different forms of movement, mindful movement, and self-regulation practices, she works with students and teachers to foster their sense of agency and feel more at home in their body. She specializes in working with people who are interested in the benefits of a mind-body practice that will improve all aspects of life. Her approach is resilient-based, and she is committed to using self-regulation and movement as tools to help people feel validated for who they are on the inside, with a fierce conviction to support a practice that is safe, brave, and accessible to all. Jen holds many yoga and movement certifications and has trained with innovators including Yoga Detour, Spirit Laugh Movement, Dr. Andreo Spina, Functional Range Conditioning, Jane Clapp Movement for Trauma, and the Fighting Monkey Practice. Additional studies include trauma-informed somatics, interpersonal neurobiology, positive neuroplasticity professional certification with Rick Hansen, slow yoga for emotional well-being with Christine Weber, and healing trauma through yoga with David Emerson. Jen is a member of the Healing Collective, where she offers movement for resilience, everybody's practice, for groups as well as private yoga and somatic coaching services. In addition, she offers online resilience coaching that is available for workshops, group classes, and educational talks across the city. Just want to take a moment to, just in case no one knows what we're doing today. Self-regulation involves taking a pause between a feeling and an action, taking the time to think things through, make a plan, wait patiently. Children often struggle with these behaviors, and most adults do as well. Add in additional toxic stress and trauma, and one's ability to regulate themselves becomes limited. The goal of this workshop is to teach you to draw on your own ability to regulate, aka self-soothe, and help your clients and patients to do the same. In addition, you will discover how toxic stress and trauma impacts the brain, nervous system, and the body, how evolution plays a role in our fundamental need to feel safe, the stress responses, dysregulation, and the window of tolerance, simple body-based self-regulation tools and practices that can improve your ability to stay grounded and calm in your own body, how co-regulation can help the people you work with get calmer in their body, relax their nervous system, and feel safer in their own skin. Self-care strategies for frontline workers and service providers. Walk away or leave feeling more resourced and connected to your own calm, strength, and resilience, and anchor others to do the same. So without further ado, and a couple of technical difficulties, I introduce you to Jen.
Yeah, for the video.
Okay, hello, is this good sound? I don't often do this, so you might have to do a couple of these. So, hello, welcome. Thanks for kind of sticking in there, taking a little breath of fresh air break and returning back. I do want to say thank you so much to my friend Venya, whom I met, I guess, earlier in this year at another conference. So it was really exciting when she reached out to me to express her own desire to run this conference. And I'm really into this idea that by sharing and sharing with others, we can really become a more trauma-informed community, no matter where our sort of position is in that, and whether or not we're frontline workers or not. We can all work towards that goal by sharing what we know and what we learn. And we don't have to be PhD experts. Not that there's anything wrong with that. It's just not where my brain goes. So, that being said, this is interactive. So, I invite whoever would like to participate, because active observing is just as much as participating, to stand up and come on down into our little movement space. We've got lots of room. Okay. Awesome. And at any time, you can totally take a seat. Everything that we're going to going to do today is optional. And observing can also be just as good information, watching other bodies. So let's just begin by walking around the space. No particular order, we're just walking around the space, taking a little stroll through the room. Got a little activated and excited there with our fire alarm. Not so much fire alarms. And as we're walking, just start to really notice, using your senses, your sight of sense, what you see. What do you see in front of you? What do you see above you, below you? Really scanning your environment. You might have already been in this room for a lot of today, but maybe start to notice some different features you didn't see. Notice the different colors, different textures, materials, where the other humans walking around you. And then I want you to slow that down a little bit. If you've noticed that you're sort of skimming your gaze, keep walking, sorry, keep walking. But if you notice you're sort of skimming the gaze really fast and quickly, see if you can slow that down and allow yourself to register with a pause what it is you're laying your gaze upon. You could even maybe quietly mouth it to yourself, so you're really taking that opportunity to register. And then from there, just pause wherever you are and just kind of notice how you feel. This is one of my favorite orienting activities that I do with clients because it's really based on our human innate need to feel safe in our environments. And sometimes we just rush in doing work wherever we do our work. And we don't take that moment to pause, to deeply allow the deepest fibers of our being feel safe. We're scanning the environment constantly for threats. Orientation like this is a really good way to kind of navigate away from maybe some scary feelings on the inside, anxiety-like feelings, and feeling a little bit more safe. And once we've done something like that, the next thing we can do is integrate that sense of safety. And we're going to do that with a bit of a body pat down. So, if it feels okay, we can do this seated as well, and I'm going to have to do it one-handed. What we're going to do is just bend our knees, and we're just going to start by tapping the bottom of the tops of our shins, just below our knees. So pretend I've got two hands doing this. It's a great added feature of me having a microphone. And then we're going to come to behind the shin, just below the knee still, so tapping both of the calves. Then coming up behind the back of the knee, coming to the front of the knee, working our way up the front of the thigh, coming onto the back of the thigh. Nice. And then from there, we can just sit straight up, coming onto the side of the hips. And then we'll work our way up onto tapping our chest. And as you're tapping your chest, you may be called to something that sounds like Tarzan. And then from there, and I'm going to do this very strategically, listen to me. My left hand is going to start to pat down the top of my right arm. And when I get to my right hand, I'm going to start by clapping my hands, giving myself an applause for all the hard work that I do. Right? Listen to the sound of your applause. And then from there, we work that left hand back up underneath the right hand this time. And then again, coming back onto that chest, maybe we go there. And then from there, now right hand up, trying to do this nicely with the microphone. So we're patting the top of our arm, coming down on to the top of our hand again. Round of applause. Really feel your hand. Listen to the sound. And underneath, we're going to do that back track, right hand, bottom side of the left arm. And this time, we're just going to tap. Again, I got one hand tapping the back of our shoulders, coming up the back of our necks, coming to tap on the top of our head, just pausing for a moment. We hear this term crown standing up tall. Woo, we got a presentation. Just notice the crown of your head. Notice that there's a bit of a flat part there, maybe deeper or less deep for some, but there's a crown of your head right there. From there, we'll keep tapping, coming onto the forehead. Maybe getting a little bit lighter now. Just onto the eyebrows, nice and gently. Coming down onto the nose, around the eye sockets. Terrific. And onto the cheeks, really lightly. Top of the lip, the lips, the chin. And then from there, almost like it's your first time washing your face, you're just going to smooth your hand over your face and really just pause and notice how the hands feel on the skin feels in your hands. Just really taking that moment for a little bit of a self-soothing opportunity, which we quite often don't allow ourselves to take. And then just allow the hands to fall to the sides and just pause. Notice your breathing. Maybe notice the body feels a little looser. Maybe the energy of excitement from our big fire is a little bit more grounded into our feet. And that just took a few minutes. But a really great opportunity for us as practitioners to do this kind of work before we meet our clients, but also we can do it with our clients. Pretty easy, yeah? Okay. So if you want to go back to taking a seat, and what I'm going to offer you while we're doing it, maybe Vanya can help me with this. These are rice-based stress balls, courtesy of the Healing Collective. And they're yours to keep. Great for children's parties, good children's party activity. Okay, so first little activity, as I said, is a really great way for yourself between sessions before you do work with folks and with your folks together to really help ground a sense of safety into the body. Again, thank you to Vanya for the introduction. We're going to sort of whip through this presentation because I'm mindful that we said we'd have you finish here at 4:15 and then out the door by about 4:30, so I'm mindful of that. So I do apologize in advance if we are sort of skipping over some things. I do like to share a little bit of psychoeducation as well as neurobiology to really explain what's going on in our body, but I might need to edit a little bit of that just for the sake of time. Does that sound fair?
Yes. Thank you.
Okay, awesome. So hopefully I can. So I apologize for that little delay, but for me, the story about how we are showing up in the world is a story of evolution. And we can go back in time many, many moons ago when our ancestors were sort of only tasked with two errors in their thinking. The first error was that there was a tiger in the woods when there wasn't. And the second error in their judgment would be that there was a tiger in the bush, or that there wasn't a tiger in the bush, and then pounce. So that first error in thinking that there was a tiger in the bush when there wasn't would lead to, as we would suspect, a whole lot of hypervigilance and anxiety. While the second error in judgment, even if we just for a moment didn't think that tiger was there, could lead to serious harm and death. So over the course of evolution, our nervous system has actually evolved to learn as well as organize itself to make the first error in judgment a gazillion times over so that we don't make that second error in judgment even just once. Does that make sense? Yeah. And so when we look at the goals of self-regulation, it's really about training the autonomic nervous system's capacity to be more resilient, even in stressful situations. It is to get our mind and our body in the same time zone, to ground us, to balance us, and to center us, which is going to allow us to be more aware of what we need. It'll help us take good and consistent care of ourselves. It'll help us make decisions. We'll know when we're reacting versus responding to situations. It'll improve our ability to attune to others. It'll connect us with our own calm strength and resilience and help anchor others to do the same. And maybe, just maybe, cultivate a little more self-compassion. So we did some of that establishing safety in the present moment with that orienting exercise. And so one thing that I find really interesting here, and I've offered sort of a definition by one of the leading trauma experts, Peter Levine, on trauma, as well as the American Psychological Association's definition of stress. And what's interesting in both scenarios is that we're talking about an overwhelm or an injury to our nervous system. And when I use the word nervous system, I'm speaking specifically of the autonomic nervous system, which is a division of our peripheral nervous system, if this is not familiar to you. And the autonomic nervous system is responsible for all of those autonomic processes that happen in your body that you don't need to think about. Your heart rate, your digestion, unconscious breathing are all coming from the autonomic nervous system. So I like to use the water in the cup analogy to sort of explain how the body is responding, not just to stress, but to trauma. Because at the end of the day, even if we don't identify with having been traumatized or had a trauma history, we can likely identify with a lot of stress, right? From all of the different places, all of the different things that our modern day brings to us. And so if we all sort of imagine that when we're first born, we have a cup. We're born with a cup. Some of us may even already have some water in that cup. And the water for me in this metaphor is stress. So we're all born with a cup. Some may have water, some may not have any water in that cup. And we start to move through life as children. We're playing, so we've got some positive stress. We play, little drips of water in our cup. Maybe there's a little bit more stress, like the first day of school, or sitting on Santa's knee, a little bit more stress, a little more water drops into that cup. Of course, we go through time, growing adults, big exam, a little bit of stress, big job interview, more stress, little drops of water. For some of us, though, we might unfortunately go through traumatic points in our life or have traumatic experiences happen to us, whether that is the loss of a loved one, injury to our body, just as two examples, but we could also have experienced more severe adverse life experiences, maybe ongoing violence. Maybe we score high on the ACE score, which is a measure of childhood adverse experiences before the age of 18. Acute stresses can quickly become chronic stresses, can quickly maybe become post-traumatic stress. So in those cases now, little drips become maybe bigger splashes, and maybe even for some of us, a free pour situation's happening. At some point, that cup is going to fill, and all of a sudden the water is just going to overflow, right? So the key here is that we can't do anything about the water. The water's not going away. The water's going to keep dripping or free pouring. But what we do have control of is increasing the size of our cup. And that's one of the goals of self-regulation. And it's just one goal. There are a lot of tools and resources out there, and I'm a big fan of having as many tools in your toolkit as you can have. And just really focusing on regulation of the autonomic nervous system is just one. So any questions at that point? Sort of edited version. Yeah? Pretty good?
Yeah.
We can shout out. I'm totally free with that. Jen! I get excited about this stuff, so if I do start to speak a little quickly, we can always do pause. All good. So I'm just going to jump us here quickly to the work of Dr. Dan Siegel, and this is his hand model of the brain. So a really quick anatomy overview of the brain. So our brain evolved over time in 3 layers. first starting from the brain stem, the next being the limbic system, and the final being our neocortex. So if we look at that using our hand, and this is really great, especially for explaining this to children, or even those that may have developmental issues, it's a really great way to explain to them what is happening when they are feeling regulated versus dysregulated as two key terms. So as you can see here, my wrist is the brain stem. So the oldest part of the brain, it's the one that is connected to our reptilian friends. Okay? My palm and my thumb make up the limbic region. My thumb specifically is a little known organ shaped, almond-shaped organ called the amygdala, which is sort of your emotional part, your reactive part of your brain. And I'm really simplifying this, knowing it is much more complex, but just some key landmarks. And then from there we have our fingers curling over top, and that making up the cortex of our brain. Okay? So, as you can see, when we are in connection, so my brain stem is connected to my limbic region and all covering up, I am regulated. And I like to draw another attention to my fingers, another area of the neocortex called the prefrontal cortex. This is where our ability to self-regulate comes from, and it's basically this part of my brain, sort of behind my forehead. So my prefrontal cortex, my rational thinking brain, is kind of hugging my emotional brain. It's the way I like to look at it. And this is really going to help me to act from a more responsive state. And this is where learning is possible. Everything is integrated, everything's connected. And then there's this, which Dr. Dan calls flipping your lid. This could look like a temper tantrum, young or old. Adults are known for them too. And in this, we can look at dysregulation now, right? And it's our rational thinking brain and our emotional brain are not talking. And essentially, our emotional brain and lower parts of our brainstem are actually running the show. No learning can happen when we're here. Not much except survival can happen here. Okay? Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Bingo. Awesome. And we carry on. So, when we're looking at we're just going to skip that. Okay, so autonomic nervous system. Just a really quick overview of the autonomic nervous system. As I've said, it's an integral part of the human nervous system. It is responsible for the monitoring and regulating activity of our visceral organs and automatic functions, digestion, respiration. For a long time, it's been widely accepted that the autonomic nervous system actually functions in two states: stress, relaxation, based on two circuits, which you may be familiar with: the sympathetic circuit, fight or flight, and the parasympathetic circuit, rest and digest. And the parasympathetic state was attributed to the activity of just one single vagus nerve. Okay? So, the old model did not account for the fact that there are two different neural pathways, which are both called vagus. So, two branches of the vagus nerve: a ventral branch and a dorsal branch. And it's Polyvagal Theory, which was coined by Dr. Stephen Porges, who really brought this attention to the forefront of research. The other interesting thing about these two branches is they don't originate from the same place. And polyvagal theory is also a more accurate representation of the autonomic nervous system as 3 neural circuits, not just 2. So now we're looking at the ventral vagal circuit, which is connected to positive states of relaxation and social engagement. We still have that sympathetic branch of fight or flight, and then we have that dorsal branch, which is more of a slow down, shut down, and moving into depressive-like behaviors. So looking at these 3 pathways a little quicker, the ventral vagal circuit is also known as social engagement, and it involves activity in the ventral branch of the vagus nerve. When it's activated, we feel calm, we feel balanced. It promotes rest and restoration. It relates to positive emotions such as joy, love, and satisfaction, as well as behaviors attributed to positive social activities with your friends and loved ones and sharing. And if you think about it, when we're talking about just basic survival, cooperation with others might actually improve our chances of survival. And that's why that this circuit exists. So the sympathetic circuit is also known as the mobilization circuit. And this is activated when our survival is threatened. We mobilize the body to respond to the threat. We fight or we flee. And it relates to emotions of anger and fear. Interesting. It is expressed as behaviors of fighting to overcome potential threats or of fleeing to get away. And this mobilization with fear arises when we are not safe or we don't feel safe. So the threat can be real or it can be perceived. Your body doesn't know the difference. It's just automatically reacting. Finally, the dorsal vagal circuit, also known as immobilization. So this involves activity of the dorsal branch of the vagus nerve. When it is activated, we face an overwhelming force or imminent threat to our lives. In this case, a better response might be to immobilize if fight or flight isn't available or possible to us for whatever the reason. Think about someone who might be held down, forcibly held down, and they can't fight and they can't flee. So the goal here is to conserve whatever resources we have left. We might start to feel hopeless, feelings of empathy might come into play. And really this is going to manifest in a spectrum of behaviors from withdrawal all the way to shutdown. And this is immobilization with fear. Now I do want to bring to light that there are two hybrid states of the autonomic nervous system. And they are basically a combination of the first three that I've explained. So the first is the experience of intimacy, which is an immobilized state. This is when the dorsal vagus is engaged to slow down the body, and the ventral vagus branch is engaged to allow for feelings of safety. So immobilization without fear is possible when both of those circuits are engaged. As well as the experience of friendly competition or even athletic sports. The sympathetic branch is activated to facilitate action, to move, to mobilize you, and the ventral vagus branch is activated to support a sense of safety. That mobilization now without fear. And then looking really quickly, coming back to that polyvagus nerve, those two branches, it is the link between our brain and our body. We've identified the dorsal and the ventral branches. They're not anatomically connected. And both branches bring about states of immobilization, whether that is fear or a sense of safety, depending on what other circuits it's combined with. So very quickly here, you can see a little bit of the work between the three circuits. So instead of just this fight or flight and maybe rest and digest, we're actually looking at two parasympathetic states, just looking at this in a different way. We have that social engagement, and when that isn't available to us, it'll be the first circuit to shut down. So if we approach a situation with diplomacy, as we often try to, trusting manner, and that isn't going to be a way for us to neutralize the threat or the situation, that circuit's going to get shut down real quick. And we're going to gear down, or gear up, I should say, into that sympathetic state of fight or flight. Because our next choice in our strategy of defense is to mobilize in some way. Can I fight my way out of this? Can I run away? What are my options here? However, if we get to that place where that threat we cannot neutralize now through mobilization in some way, what ends up happening is we final default to that shutdown or into that dorsal vagal circuit, that state of immobilization. And I do want to be clear that immobilization may be the best option we have for our safety. And I think sometimes there's a lot of shame attached to, at least a lot of women that I work with, there's a lot of shame attached to them not being able to fight or get away from their attackers. And for a long time, we didn't really have any explanation to sort of take away that shame, because they were doing, their body, not they, because there's no rational thought, we're just in survival mode. They were doing the best that they could. They had the best strategy at hand to take care of themselves with the hopes that they might be able to get away. So just something to keep in mind. I personally think, and I see this a lot, that we spend a lot of time talking about stress and people being overactivated and stressful world, and which is not dismissing that. I'm one of those humans. I need more like damping and down-regulation. But there are equally a lot of people, a lot of them for me are female that I'm seeing that fall into that category, where there's just this, for them it's better to stay small, it's better to stay safe, which, it weighs heavy on my heart, and I can kind of see that with you as well. So just, I like to point that out. How are we doing? Yeah, okay. 3:45. All right, so we're gonna just quickly, so the last piece I just want to look at is sort of putting this all together in terms of the window of stress tolerance or traumatic experience tolerance. So I know that Vanya, because this is really probably hard to see, I will be sharing this as a PDF, so you'll have a little bit more access. You can actually read this.
Oh, yes.
This is a really great graphic, though, from the, I don't even know how to say it all, but NICABM, one of my favorite places. You'll see the link there. But window of tolerance. When we are in here, this is when we're feeling just right. Life's pretty groovy, right? We're balanced, in control. When dysregulation starts to come in, dysregulation can happen either at the top of our window for some of us, or maybe down more towards the bottom of the window. So, when we're dysregulated, we're still in control, but we might feel a little uncomfortable, varying degrees of uncomfortableness. It's not a word, but when we're in this dysregulated state towards the top of our window, this is more agitated, irritated, frustrated, maybe a little angry, annoyed. Again, in control. If I'm going back to my hand model, I might be sort of here, where my wind wants to go, but it doesn't. But I'm experiencing more like anxiety-like symptoms. Whereas someone that might default a little bit on the lower end into dysregulation here might start to feel a little bit spacey, tired, a little withdrawn. Life is a little bit more, is a little less accessible than it was. Just a sense of kind of dullness, flatness. Again, in control, but not really comfortable. It's when we get overwhelmed, when that water flows out of our cup, that we move into hyperarousal and hypoarousal. Hyperarousal, as you can imagine, again, just an amped up state. There's a lot of energy there. Anger, fear, frustration, rage, lots going on in hyperarousal. But equally so down in hypoarousal. But now we're looking at more extreme forms where people are really struggling to possibly get out of bed, right? The shutdown mechanisms in the body are really putting us in a place where it's hard, right? It's hard to maneuver the world. And one thing I'll point out when we're talking about boundaries, you might notice this with folks you work with, a hyper or a more hypoaroused individual is likely going to express boundaries of like the wall up to the ceiling. Like they're just locked down, their sense of safety and control is really, they're holding on for dear life. Whereas someone more that might identify with being hyper-aroused, very loose with the boundaries. You may even notice with those folks that they're not really sensing danger or threat when it's right there in front of them. So their sense of boundaries are just non-existent. Again, spectrum, but it's just interesting there when we're talking about the folks that we work with. And so again, really quickly, how this might show up. Hyperarousal, looking anything from hyperactivity, hypervigilance, rage, big startle response, very tense. limited ability to communicate, limited capacity for reason and perspective, more vigilant boundaries. Compared to the hyper-aroused, which is more in that dorsal vagal state, chronic fatigue, depression, dissociation, underreactions, inability to feel pain, constriction, limited ability to communicate, limited capacity for reason and perspective, which is interesting. That's something that shows up between the two, and as well as less aware of healthy personal boundaries. And this is like just some of the things. It's an exhaustive list. And quite often, at least in the humans I have the great fortune of working with, I see a lot of crossover. So it's always super interesting that I could see someone who is sort of presenting more anxiety and panic, except there's an underlying chronic depression as well. So it's like, I mean, at the end of the day, hyper or hypo, it's exhausting. It's exhausting to live in a body that is dysregulated, right? So, as practitioners and frontline workers, really doing the hard work, there's also things that are going to come across to you. Compassionate fatigue, secondary trauma, vicarious trauma. These are all experiences that may be your lived situation as you're trying to help other humans that are struggling. You know, this becomes your situation too. So we need to take care of ourselves. And with that being said, again, come on down and we'll do some activities together. Yeah. Okay. So what we're going to do here is we're going to experience a little bit of activation or dysregulation in a controlled way in our bodies, and then we're going to have some somewhat fancy tools to play with to feel what maybe calming the body is like in our body. And so one thing that I've learned is that in order to really get into this work, I had to find really novel and fun ways to do it. But I also learned that in finding novel and fun ways to self-regulate, it was also really good for little people, and even those that might not be, that are just suffering from different experiences, that may just be more in a place where they need to have fun and games in order to be engaging for them, wherever that situation is. So I also like the dollar store because none of what I am sharing today is about fancy tools or really expensive Amazon purchases, though it is Christmas. So that being said, what we'll start off with, and I'm just being mindful of shoes, I think we're all good, that we can take this in two ways. The activation part can either be thinking about sort of a current situation in your life that feels a bit stressful, a little annoying or irritating, maybe the later part of our little fire alarm, but just thinking about that, calling on it, something that's manageable. We're not processing traumas here today, but just something that kind of is a bit irritating. Just sort of, you're going to call that to mind. If you don't want to go there, then what we're going to do is maybe activate the body with something like just simple jumping jacks, okay? Or even marching on the spot. But either way, we're looking to kind of create that feeling of activation, increasing our heart rate a little bit, and just, we're going to go with it, okay? Does that feel okay? And again, we can tap out, sit down whenever we want, totally optional. So I'm going to time, maybe where you're watching. Actually, no, I don't need your watch now. When you're ready, we're either calling to mind or we're going to get active. And we're going to get active with me. If I'm going to be the only person in the room getting active, you can join me. It's all good. We can also dance, whatever we want to do. Come on, join me. It's just us folks in the room and the camera. Yeah, okay. Yeah. So just keep going. Just keep going. Just as much as you need. Get that heart rate a little bit up. And we're not going for the big workout, but just something to get activated. If you're marching, maybe stamping the ground, really make that happen. Swing those arms a little bit bigger. Keep moving. And then wherever you are, maybe we'll just start jumping on the spot. Jump, jump up, do jumping jacks. You can notice your breathing, notice your heart rate, even the tension in the body. We're going to take that ball and we're going to try to balance it. And we're going to let it fall off the plate if it falls off, because we'll just pick it up, but we're just going to really focus on the task of balancing the ball on the plate. Notice if you're holding your breath. And if it feels like you want to explore this further, maybe start walking, taking a few steps with that ball on the plate. Again, notice if you are holding your breath. If you want to explore further, you can pause where you are and start to balance on one leg while you balance the ball on the plate. From there, just collecting your ball, and then what we'll do is we just come back and put our plates down, and just sort of notice. We're going to stay down in the room. Yep. Yep. We're going to come back to them. Okay, so we're going to do that again. Either we are thinking about something we're calling to mind that feels stressful, or we're going to have a little dance party again. Okay, so let's go. Around the room, I feel like that's what we need to do on this Friday afternoon. Even going in there and clap your hands. Really get the body moving to the best that you can. Nice. Now this time maybe move it a little bit faster. So now we have to be mindful of the bodies in the room. And now we're going to walk backwards, keeping that up. And then last, we'll do 10 jumping jacks all together. You just use your arms if you don't have the little jump, that's fine. Yep. Any amount that you can. And now, let's all just feet on the floor. Maybe take a bit of a wider stance so you're not sort of teetering on 2 feet. From there, we're just going to start to bend into the knees, okay? So bending into the knees. You're almost like you're bouncing. So you're just going to like, yeah, little. Okay, so we're bouncing almost like we are a little bit of a spring or slinky, okay? As we do this, if it felt okay on the quads, start to bring a little bit of shoulder movement. So we're bouncing through our knees, our ankles, shoulders, elbows. Maybe we can even get a sense of flicking some gum off our fingers. So we're flicking, bouncing. Really just thinking about discharging that stress we accumulated out of the body. Again, thinking, are we holding our breath? Can we sort of think about letting go on the exhales as a way, not the only way, as a place to go. Shake, shake, shake. From there, we might even throw one shoulder into it. This is really good to do with kids, and I'm not even kidding, because they love the shake out dance party, which is where we're going to go, as much or as little, okay? And then from there, we're going to allow those hands to come up a little bit higher, only as much as you need. We're not going for pain here, we're just going for discharge. discharging the energy we've accumulated. Shake, 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 all over the place, shake the cooties out. I've used other words as an adult. We can do this in washroom stalls too, right? This kind of thing. We can go into a public washroom stall when we're feeling this kind of activation in our body. I love that you're doing it up there. Allow those hands to fall beside and pause. Just notice how you feel aside from hot. That's good. Sort of maybe a more awareness of your whole body, not just what's sitting above your shoulders, right? There's more of you than just that. And then from there, we're just going to come into a moving twist. So just pressing through our feet to allow a twisting action to happen all the way up to the crown of that head. Just notice where the knees are sort of twisting, the hips are twisting, shoulders are twisting, maybe the gaze is moving over his shoulder. And then from there, we're just going to allow that to slow us down. Our momentum, we're not going to put a pause, a hard pause on it. We're just going to allow the momentum to slow on its own. Beautiful. Just allowing ourselves to come back to balance. And again, pause. The pause is just as important as the activity. Notice how you feel. Notice your breath. Maybe notice any sensations that you may have had here before. Maybe notice shoulders feel a bit heavier. And whatever you notice is true, by the way. There's no right or wrong here. It's just what is true for you. Anybody want to share? Just observations between being activated and then calming it down. We sort of did two different strategies. One more of a balanced technique, which is more task-based. This one being a little bit more free-form, but both self-regulation. Anyone want to share? And you don't have to, of course. I won't start pointing at people.
I'm happy to share something. My role now is very different than it was this morning, and I felt like there was a part of my body that was not awake or active or noticed, and so this exercise helps integrate my parts really nicely. I'm noticing my full body.
Nice.
Whereas this morning, unaware, it wasn't awake at all. There was a lot of nerves this morning, and now that was really helpful, where everything was awakened and integrated. So I like that.
Thank you for sharing that. And something about the integration piece is like the goal of self-regulation, as I said, one of the goals is bringing the brain and the body into the same time zone. That is when we can actually respond and not just react like a disaster, right? That is the goal. And our level of activation in our body, our clients, our patients pick up on that. Nervous systems talk, right? So if we're walking into a session, just the mirroring of my form is going to, be put on to my client. So it's just always something I'm very conscious of how am I walking into that space. So are we feeling okay? Okay, no more of that crazy activation stuff. But what we are going to do is come and do some partner work with the Dowel if this feels okay. So if you don't want to participate with a partner, you could actually take one of these dowels and practice on your own. But if you want to try just some more sort of co-regulating activities, connecting to our strength, I invite you to. So, yeah. See who wants to. You just need a partner and one dowel between the two of you. And we'll just make a line. Let's just say this way, right down. So one partner will be on this side, and then the other partner will be facing along here. So 2 rows. So Vanya, you'll mark one side and I'll mark the other.
Yeah.
So we see?
Okay, I'm gonna stay. If you want to be partner, then I know where to go. Any of you? If you're doing partners, can you do it here just so we don't need anybody? Here? Yeah, there you go. Can you go over there? I'm not gonna go through. What's that line dance? Thank you. Oh, no, totally.
Okay, so again, what I'm gonna ask of us is that we don't really so that we can, it's okay, we talk. But I really want you to observe your experience, and I want you to observe your partner's experience. This is partnered work, it's co-regulated work, okay? Again, like I said, I like to make sure that things are accessible when we're talking about spending money on things. This is one of those, this one I like because it's colorful and it's good for kids. This one you can buy at the dollar store, and it's just the broom holder, right? These are a little bit fancier dowels from the Home Depot, but either will work. Okay, so I'm gonna demonstrate with Vanya the first thing that we're gonna do, if that's okay, Vanya. First off, if you haven't already said hello to your partner, say hello, smile, make some social engagement, right? So what's gonna happen is, and you're gonna figure out the distance with your partner, but Annie and I are just gonna both take the dowel, and they're long enough that you can find, I like to have my arms a bit wider, that feels comfortable for you, okay. Got a bit of a blend in my elbows, so I'm not locking out my elbows, but something where I kind of feel, yeah, solid, and I might even step a little bit wider, bend into my knees a little bit, okay, yeah? So the first thing we're gonna do, not moving, is we're gonna start to think about breaking this broom handle. We both do it together, we're not gonna break it. We're gonna think about spinning our pinkies down towards the floor. So I'm gripping, and I'm kind of like, I'm trying to break. And I'm just gonna hold here. And we're gonna hold here just for a few moments. And we're gonna start to notice and feel stuff in the body. And we're gonna watch our partner, and we're gonna observe ourselves, okay? Does that feel okay? Okay, don't say anything. So spread out a little bit, just so you have enough room with the dowels. Oh yeah, amazing. Yeah, this is fine. Yeah. Spread out so we've got lots of room. So the first thing we're gonna do again is we're gonna try to not talk, so you can really pay attention to your partner, to yourself. We're gonna find a nice wide stance where we feel like our legs have got us, and then we're gonna have our hands on that dowel, or for me, the broomstick, that feels like they are comfortable. We're not too far in, we're not too wide. Okay, just negotiating that with your neighbor. And then when you're ready, starting to squeeze that dowel, so really grip it. Notice if you stop breathing. And then start to almost think about spinning your pinkies towards the ground. So you're trying to break that dowel. And if anybody does, you get a high five from me. But I want you to hold on to that work that you're doing right now. And I want you to really see if you can notice where you're feeling work in your body, where you're feeling maybe tension or muscles turning on. Notice if you or your partner have dropped their gaze, even if you don't want to make eye contact. We're going to keep breathing. And while we're doing this, can we also find our feet? Just thinking about grounding into the floor while we break this dowel. Oh my gosh, we might actually go. And then we're going to let it go.
Let it go?
Yeah, I'm sorry when I say let it go. Just So, this is a really, does anybody, what did you feel? Nothing, it's all true. Nothing wrong, it's all true. What do we feel? Okay. Did you notice anything about your gaze or your partner's gaze when you started to kind of add some tension into your body? Okay. Okay. Okay.
I couldn't look at her. And I felt, confrontational almost. I felt,
So, this is really generalizing, but especially women, this sense of not feeling strong and big. And it really shows up for us, even in something as simple as adding a bit of tension into the body. Tension in the body is not a bad thing. Our body needs to know that we've got back muscles, because we have them, but they're not on the brain map. We don't use them. We don't, and I'm not talking about lifting weights, I'm talking about showing up with a broadness, with a posture of dignity. And so this is a really great partnered exercise to work on when you feel that sense of collapsing in, or even anxiety coming up. Can you breathe through it? right? Because we can, and we're just pretending to break something. It's safe, but we're training our nervous system to be a bit more resilient. Does that make sense? Yeah?
Yeah.
You guys are awesome. Okay, so same thing, we're gonna come back to holding the dowel. We're just gonna have a little bit more of now a real partner participation without speaking. We need to sort of negotiate with our neighbors. So you can go back and grab your dowel. And this time we're gonna flip our grip so that our palms are facing towards the ceiling. So it's gonna be an underhanded grip. If anybody goes to a gym and using a rowing machine, you'll sort of know where we're going. But find your feet wide again, bend into your knees. Really find that those strong legs, they're all strong. You all have strong legs or else you would have fallen over by now, okay? Just in case you weren't sure, you have strong legs. So when you're ready, one partner at a time, one partner is going to start to pull and bend their elbows back towards behind them, and the other person's arms are going to straighten as a result. So we're sort of doing a rowing exercise now between the two. So you have to work on a give and take without words. So we're actually going to row. So you'll have to allow, one person will have to allow the other to pull S. So doing this in community, working with each other together, syncing up both of your strong, powerful bodies. And again, slow it down. And notice if we've stopped breathing. Notice if we've dropped our gaze. Can we lift it? It's okay not to make eye contact, but see if we can just keep that crown tall to the ceiling. And really breathe and press into your feet. And just notice if there are uncomfortable things coming up. Does it subside at some point? And maybe it does, maybe it doesn't. Beautiful. Beautiful. And then we can release that, not let it go, release that. Okay, so did it feel any different? Again, so we're doing this rowing, a little bit of movement now, not just this sort of like, ugh. Did it feel different? What did it, how did it feel different? And again, it's all true. Amazing. Social engagement. Amazing. Have you ever met before? Nope. Great. Your nervous systems calm each other. Amazing. Amazing. Right? Because I'm making you do some strange things with people you've never done before. Okay.
On a Friday afternoon.
On a Friday afternoon. So the last little exploration we will do, let me just have a time check here.
Almost 4:15.
Okay, so last little one. This time what we're going to do is, I'm just going to pour over quickly.
Yeah.
We're just, this is a really nice one. This is partner co-regulation with a little bit more freedom. And it also allows for people to make choices. Again, we need to navigate with our partner without verbal communication. But we're also going to be a little bit more, I might feel like I want to put a little bit more towards Vanya, and Vanya wants to give a bit more towards me. So again, we're thinking up between each other, and it's a little bit more not so constructed, especially if this is too much. So it's just going to look like, we're just going to put the ends of the dowel into the palm of our hand, our limbic system. And then we can just simply start with just sort of this. And I might push a little bit, she might give me a little bit. We're just going to sort of end on this note, a little bit more flowy and free. Okay? You could add, if you feel okay, a little bit of movement together. If you felt okay, but you don't need to. Not necessary. Just work with your partner in this non-communication, non-verbal communication way. So let's go back. Yeah. This is really fostering boundaries once again, non-contact boundaries, but encouraging a little bit of curiosity, a little bit of play.
Self-regulation.
Yeah.
Yeah. Is it? Yes. No.
just notice again for a moment how that little partnered activity felt. Did you find it maybe easier to breathe without thinking about it? Yeah. Right? You can go back to your seats. So with that last little exploration, that was really layering on an element of curiosity and play. And I'm hearing this from most of you, and please do correct me if I'm wrong in what I was hearing, but things like, am I holding my breath, were not something you had to worry about. You were breathing. You were moving. You were communicating with another human being. You felt more comfortable. You felt more safe. You know, these are really great things that we can be doing with our clients in our sessions. And again, a broom handle is all that you need. Especially if someone is not just can't take touch onto their body. This is a really nice way to do it. So really, really quickly, just to recap, I just want to share some of my top self-care strategies. First one, and I think we kind of got this about why I'm here today, but self-regulate with the goal of syncing up your brain and body. And don't just do those activities when you're feeling stressed, because I guarantee you won't do them. And don't leave here and just be like, well, I did it at that workshop, I'll do it at another. We've got to practice these things. We got to practice them often. I actually make a habit of doing it every day. Even though this is the work I do, I need to practice it still so that it's there and shows up for me when I'm actually in that overwhelmed state. Move. Even a little bit every day. And when I say move, I'm not talking about a yoga class per se or a spin class. I love spin, by the way. I don't know if there was a spinner in here. Walking. Even around your house. Even around your workplace. Just taking a walk. Just 5-minute pause to check in so you can ask yourself, what is it that I need? Prioritize those breaks. Take proper holidays. I can't even believe I have that coming out of my mouth, but it is essential that we are stepping away from the work that we do so that we can recharge and then show back up in a place that is ready to go and ready to be and support our clients. Again, another hard one, but work towards a balanced and realistic workload. It'll pay in the end. We'll avoid burnout, because this is really the situation where we're moving towards is burnout, and then we're no good to the humans that we're there to service, and we're no good to ourselves, and we're no good to the loved ones around us, right? Because we have lives too. Schedule social interactions that aren't related to work where you can. Do something you enjoy. Play, have fun. We're adults. We get to do those things still. Nobody said just because you turned a certain age that had to stop. What we did here, kind of fun, right? Maintain divisions and boundaries as best you can between work and home, especially if you do work from home. I'm guilty of that. My kitchen table is my office space, and my husband every day just big shake of the head because it's a disaster, and that's something I need to be working on. You know, express how you're feeling to colleagues, family, and friends. I think we are definitely more in an age where speaking out, asking for help are more accessible, and people don't feel as concerned to do it. However, if that's not your situation, because we don't all always have those things, then maybe we're seeking the support of personal therapy or other support work. There are some amazing people out there that can help with stress management specifically. So ask for help, right? It's okay. It's completely okay to ask for help. And if you're ever not sure, contact me and I'll give you my permission. You have the permission to ask for help. And that being said, in closing, just thank you very much. I know we had a few hints in it, but I hope you are able to walk away with a little bit more regulation, maybe a tip or tool that you can take with you and share with your communities. But thank you very much. You're all amazing.